Part 1. Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Villain Arc's Novels. You know where to find us at Villain Arc Novels. For those of you who flooded the comments with the word nuggets after that last video, you are absolute legends. To recap, last time, we were just trying to have a peaceful Friday night pizza party. The Demon King and the Archangel of the Heavenly Host were arguing over pineapple on pizza. Nyx was watching her favorite cartoon, and everything was chill sight. Then, the literal IT department of the universe. These glowing, featureless system architects crashed the server, froze time, and brought a fleet of 1,000,000-dimension erasing warships just to delete my 6-year-old site. I told you guys I was going to do some debugging. You probably expected a massive, galaxy-shattering anime battle, right? Yeah, no. I'm exhausted, my pizza was getting cold, and I am not dragging out a cosmic war just for the aesthetic. I didn't summon 1,000 glowing swords. I didn't type out some complex hacking matrix. I'm a tired single dad, not a movie hacker from the 90s. I just opened my administrator interface, looked at the 1,000,000-dimension-ending warships blotting out the digital sky, and opened the task manager. I highlighted universe_armada.exe and casually clicked force quit. Poof. No explosion. No dramatic screaming. Millions of warships just popped like cheap soap bubbles and vanished into thin air. The 3 glowing system architects floated there, looking like shiny bowling pins that had just realized they were standing in the wrong lane. Error. The central architect stuttered, its voice glitching out like a broken GPS, root access denied. Command unrecognizable. Yeah, that's called being an admin, buddy. I sighed, crossing my arms. Now listen to me very carefully. I don't care about your deletion protocols or your cosmic narrative. I care that my air conditioning has been broken for 2 weeks. So, you 3 are going to manifest in the physical realm, march down to my landlord's office, and fix the HVAC system. If you try to delete my kid again, I'm changing your source code so you only speak in Comic Sans. Do we have a deal? The absolute creators of the universe vibrated in sheer, unadulterated terror before nodding furiously and popping out of existence. I snapped my fingers. The binary code ceiling vanished. The living room walls returned. Time unpaused. Asmodeus finished his bite of pepperoni pizza, completely oblivious. On the TV, the red ninja dinosaur landed his finishing blow. Nyx jumped up from the carpet, her silver hair bouncing. Papa! He clutched it. The red ninja has saved the galaxy. Told you he would, kid? I smiled, sitting back down in my recliner and taking a bite of my pizza. The universe was saved, the server was stable, and I didn't even have to break a sweat. But honestly, guys, dealing with the cosmic authorities was a walk in the park compared to my real problem. The next morning was Saturday, and Saturday meant one thing: grocery shopping. Now, taking the future Empress of the Abyss to the Mart is essentially a high-stakes escort mission. I strapped Nyx into the baby seat of the shopping cart, which she insisted was her chariot of conquest, and pushed her through the sliding glass doors. Mortal! Nyx yelled, pointing a tiny finger at an old guy handing out cheese samples. The Empress demands your dairy offerings. Surrender the cheddar, or face the void. The old guy just chuckled, handed her a tiny piece of cheese on a toothpick, and said, "There you go, little lady." Nyx looked at the cheese, then at me, completely baffled that her intimidation tactics resulted in free snacks. Papa, these peasants are incredibly compliant. I shall spare this realm. Eat your cheese, kid, I muttered, pushing the cart toward the cereal aisle. I was looking for the fruit snacks, but they rearranged the entire store. I saw a teenager in a red vest restocking shelves and waved my hand. Hey man, excuse me, where are the... He literally looked right past me, put his headphones in, and kept walking. Completely ignored me. Just totally walked right past. Honestly, guys, it felt exactly like when I tell you to smash that subscribe button and 70% of you just scroll past. Do me a massive favor, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. The algorithm feeds my administrator system, and I need the AdSense revenue because Nyx goes through a box of chicken nuggets every 2 days. Anyway, we finally made it to the cereal aisle, and that's when disaster struck. I promised Nyx we could get her absolute favorite, sugar-coated Galactic Marshmallow Blasters. It's a limited edition run. But when we got to the shelf, it was completely empty. And standing at the end of the aisle, with a shopping cart filled to the brim with literally every single box of the Galactic Marshmallow Blasters, was Susan. Yes, Susan. The PDA mom from the talent show. The one who brought organic kale chips to a bake sale. She was casually scrolling on her phone, hoarding 30 boxes of sugary cereal like a suburban dragon guarding its hoard. Nix's eyes immediately started to glow a dangerous, violent purple. The temperature in the cereal aisle plummeted. "Papa," she whispered, her voice echoing with abyssal resonance. "That mortal has stolen the royal treasury. I shall cast her soul into eternal darkness." "Hold on, Nix," I whispered, crouching down next to the cart. "We don't explode people in the Megamart. Remember the rules." "But Papa, the marshmallows." "Watch and learn, kid." I smiled. "You don't need dark magic to win a battle. Sometimes you just need a little bit of psychological warfare." I didn't use my system. I didn't hack reality. I just walked up to Susan, pretending to look at the oatmeal. "Oh, hey Susan. Wow, that's a lot of Galactic Blasters. You stocking up for Brayden?" Susan looked up, startled, then gave me that fake, condescending smile. "Oh, Ethan. Yes, well, Brayden's aura tutor said he needs more synthetic sugars to boost his mana output. I decided to buy the store out so none of the lesser children get an unfair advantage." I just nodded, looking deeply concerned. "Wow, brave of you. I mean, after the recall." Susan froze. "They... what?" "The FDA recall." I lied, completely deadpan. "Didn't you see the news this morning? Apparently, the Red Star marshmallows in that specific batch were accidentally coated in a hyperlaxative variant of mana dust. Kids are spending 3 days in the bathroom. It's a total disaster. But hey, if Brayden's tutor recommends it, who am I to judge?" Susan's face went completely pale. She looked down at the mountain of cereal in her cart like it was a ticking time bomb. "Laxative?" "Yeah," I said casually. "I was just coming over here to warn people. Anyway, good luck with the aura training." I turned around and started pushing Nix's cart away. I didn't even make it to the end of the aisle before I heard the frantic sound of Susan rapidly throwing all 30 boxes of cereal back onto the shelves, abandoning her cart, and practically sprinting toward the organic section. I casually backed my cart up, grabbed 2 boxes of the Galactic Blasters, and tossed them in. Nix was staring at me, her mouth hanging open in sheer awe. The purple glow in her eyes was replaced by pure, unadulterated respect. "Papa," she whispered, "you defeated the Horde Guardian without drawing a blade. You lied. With such elegance. It's called outplaying your opponent, kid." I grinned, tossing a bag of pizza rolls into the cart. "Welcome to the real classroom of the elite." So after the whole Megamart cereal incident, I thought I had earned at least a solid week of peace. I thought I could just sit on my couch, eat my pizza rolls, and watch the paint peel off my apartment walls. But the universe, and more specifically the local kindergarten PDA, had other plans for me. Started on a Tuesday morning. I was standing in the kitchen, half awake, trying to aggressively will my coffee maker into brewing faster, when Nix marched in. She was wearing her green dinosaur onesie, holding a crumpled piece of yellow paper, and looking incredibly serious. "Papa," she declared, slamming the yellow paper onto the cheap laminate counter. "The mortal instructor, Mrs. Davis, demands your signature. We are to embark on a crusade to observe the imprisoned beasts of your realm. I require a juice box and a chaperone." I blinked the sleep out of my eyes and uncrumpled the paper. It was a permission slip for a kindergarten field trip to the city zoo. And right at the bottom, there was a sticky note from Susan, the PDA mom I had mentally destroyed in the cereal aisle. The note read, "Ethan, we are short on parent chaperones. We expect you to do your part for the community." Susan. I groaned, letting my head hit the kitchen cabinet. Susan was totally trying to get back at me for the laxative cereal lie. She knew I hated crowds. She knew I hated walking. and she absolutely knew that managing the literal harbinger of the apocalypse in a public space filled with exotic animals was going to be a nightmare. A crusade, huh? I sighed, grabbing a pen and signing the paper. Listen to me, Nix. We are going to look at monkeys. We are not conquering anything. You are not allowed to resurrect the fossils in the dinosaur exhibit, and you are absolutely not allowed to recruit the penguins into your dark army. Do we have a deal? Nix crossed her arms and pouted. The flightless tuxedo birds have the souls of warriors, Papa. But fine. I shall spare the zoo. For now. 2 hours later, I was sitting on a school bus that smelled aggressively of cheap apple juice and despair. Nix was sitting next to me, her face pressed against the glass, glaring at the passing cars. When we finally got to the zoo, it was absolute chaos. 30 sugar-fueled kindergartners running around like unguided missiles. Mrs. Davis looked like she was reconsidering every life choice that led her to a career in education. Susan was there, of course, wearing a perfectly pressed safari outfit and blowing a shiny silver whistle every time a kid stepped out of line. Our first stop was the petting zoo. I figured it was safe. Just a bunch of tired goats and some sheep. What could possibly go wrong? Nix marched right up to a massive, grumpy-looking billy goat. She planted her hands on her hips, her purple eyes glowing faintly. "Hear me, horned beast of the mortal realm," she squeaked, trying to make her voice sound as booming and abyssal as possible. "I am Nyx, Empress of the Void. Bow before my dark majesty, and I shall grant you a place in my vanguard." The goat stared at her for exactly 3 seconds. Then it casually leaned forward and ate the yellow visitor sticker right off her shirt. Nyx gasped, taking a step back in sheer horror. "Papa!" she yelled, pointing at the chewing goat. "The beast has consumed my royal emblem, has declared war. Hand me my blade." "You don't have a blade, you're 6? I sighed, pulling her back by the hood of her dinosaur onesie. "And he just likes the taste of adhesive. Let's go look at the flamingos." We spent the next hour walking around, and honestly, it was kind of nice. Nyx tried to challenge a silverback gorilla to a staring contest. She lost because she got distracted by a butterfly, and she spent 20 minutes trying to convince a sloth to join the dark side. It was just a normal, exhausting day of parenting. But obviously, because I have the luck of a guy who just dropped his toast butter side down, the alarm started blaring. Beep, beep, beep. A massive, glowing red dimensional rift tore open right above the reptile house. The sky turned a sickly shade of violet. The emergency sirens echoed across the park, and the automated loudspeakers started looping a pre-recorded voice. "Attention. A D-rank dungeon break has occurred. All civilians please evacuate to the designated safe zones." The parents started screaming. Susan blew her whistle so hard I thought she was going to pass out. Mrs. Davis was frantically trying to herd 30 crying kindergartners toward the exit. I just stood there, holding a half-eaten soft pretzel, staring up at the rift. A D-rank break. Honestly, barely a threat. A few overgrown lizards, maybe a low-level troll. I could snap my fingers, use my administrator system to wipe the rift from the server's cache, and be back to eating my pretzel in 2 seconds. But before I could even open my console, a blinding flash of golden light descended from the sky. Landing directly on top of the Dippin' Dots stand was a guy wearing full, gleaming silver armor. He had a massive broadsword on his back, hair that was perfectly gelled despite the fact that he just fell from the sky, and a camera drone hovering right over his shoulder. It was Silver Fong, an A-rank hunter who was more famous for his TikTok dances than his actual combat skills. "Fear not, citizens," Silver Fong shouted, striking a dramatic pose for his drone. "The Silver Fong is here. I shall cleanse this rift and protect the innocent. Make sure to tune into my live stream. Link in bio." I rolled my eyes so hard I almost saw my own brain. Nyx tugged on my pant leg. "Papa, who is the shiny loud mortal? His aura is incredibly annoying." "He's a clout chaser, kid," I muttered. "Come on. Let's just go to the food court and wait for him to finish." But as Silver Fong leaped toward the reptile house, drawing his massive sword, I noticed something glitching in my vision. My system popped up a warning box. "Alert. Spatial anomaly detected. Rift classification updating. Error. Recalibrating. Rift classification updated to B rank. A B rank break. The monsters pouring out of the rift weren't low-level lizards. They were venom-scale basilisks. Massive, armored serpents the size of school buses, dripping with highly corrosive acid. Silver Fong landed in front of them, swung his sword, and struck the lead basilisk right on the scales. His sword didn't even leave a scratch. The basilisk looked down at him, hissed, and spat a glob of acid that completely melted the Dippin' Dots stand behind him into a puddle of neon sludge. Silver Fong's dramatic smile instantly vanished. The color completely drained from his face. He completely ignored the warning signs that this boss was out of his league. Honestly, guys, he ignored those massive red flags exactly like how 70% of you watching this video are ignoring the red subscribe button right below me. Seriously, smash that button. Nyx needs a new pair of light-up sneakers and inflation is kicking my teeth in. Silver Fong started backing up, looking terrified. The camera drone was still broadcasting everything. If he ran, his career was over. If he stayed, he was going to be snake food. Susan and the other parents were trapped behind a blocked-off walkway, screaming for help. I sighed, tossing the rest of my pretzel into a trash can. I just wanted a chow, I grumbled. I didn't want to fight. If I stepped in and one-shot a B-rank boss in front of a camera drone, my peaceful life would be over. The Hunter Association would be knocking on my door, the government would try to draft me, and I'd have to pay taxes in a higher bracket. No thanks. I needed a classroom of the elite-level solution. I needed Silver Fong to win, but I needed to do all the work without anyone noticing. My eyes flashed with blue, glitching administrator energy. I opened the developer console in my mind. I didn't target the monsters. I targeted Silver Fong's sword. Target. Silver broadsword. Executing command. Override durability-infinite. Override damage multiplier-x 5000. Silent execution. Next, I targeted the 3 venom-scale basilisks. Target. Basilisks. Executing command. Modify status-blindness. 100%. Modify armor-paper mache. Silver Fong was currently screaming, holding his sword up in a desperate, weak attempt to block as the lead basilisk lunged at him. The massive snake's fangs clamped down on the sword. But instead of the sword breaking, the 5000x damage multiplier kicked in. The sheer kinetic rebound generated a shockwave that blasted the basilisk backward. The monster's papier-mâché armor shattered, and it collapsed to the ground, instantly defeated. Silver Fong blinked, looking at his sword in absolute disbelief. He had no idea what just happened. He thought he had just tapped into some hidden anime protagonist power. His confidence skyrocketed. Ha! He yelled for the camera drone. Behold the true power of the Silver Fong. He blindly swung his sword at the air. He was a terrible swordsman, entirely off balance. But it didn't matter. I subtly used a tiny gravity pull from my system to drag the second blind basilisk right into the path of his chaotic swing. Slice. The monster disintegrated. For the third one, Silver Fong tried to do a dramatic spinning jump attack. He completely missed, flying right past the monster and landing face first in a bush. Couldn't help it. I snickered. While he was in the bush, I casually flicked a pebble at the third basilisk, applying a microspatial bypass to the rock. The pebble hit the giant snake in the forehead with the force of a freight train, instantly knocking it out cold just as Silver Fong pulled himself out of the bushes. The rift sealed itself. The sky turned blue again. The parents erupted into cheers. Susan was clapping so hard she dropped her whistle. "Oh, thank goodness for the brave hunters," she cried out. Silver Fong stood up, brushing dirt off his shiny armor, puffing his chest out for his drone. He had just soloed a B-rank break. He was going to trend on Twitter for a week. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it for free. I walked over to him, holding Nyx's hand. The camera drone zoomed in on us. "Wow," I said loudly, making sure the drone's microphone picked it up. "Silver Fong, that was incredible. You saved all these kindergartners. And as a reward, I heard you say on your live stream earlier that if you ever saved a school field trip, You'd buy lunch for the entire class and their chaperones. What a guy! Silver Fong froze. He looked at me, then at the camera drone, then at the 30 hungry kindergartners staring at him with wide, hopeful eyes. He definitely never said that. But he couldn't back down now, not on a live broadcast. He forced a painful, strained smile. Yes, of course. Lunch is on me. Kids. Nix looked up at me, a devious little smirk on her face. Papa, she whispered, you have extorted the shiny mortal for sustenance. Your darkness is truly inspiring. Just learning to navigate the system. Kid? I smiled. 30 minutes later, the entire kindergarten class was sitting in the zoo food court, feasting on hot dogs, ice cream, and churros, all paid for by a very depressed-looking Silver Fong, who was currently staring at his rapidly declining bank account balance on his phone. I sat back on a plastic bench, taking a bite of a warm cinnamon sugar churro. Nix was sitting next to me, happily munching on a hot dog, swinging her legs. The world didn't end, the PDA moms were safe, and I didn't have to spend a single dime. Sometimes, being an elite administrator isn't about throwing galaxies at your enemies. Sometimes it's just about securing free snacks for your kid. Getting a 6-year-old Demon Empress to nap after a zoo trip fueled by churros and Silver Fong's shattered ego is like trying to put a plastic lid on an active volcano. By the time Sunday rolled around, I was looking forward to exactly one thing. Sitting in my recliner, wearing sweatpants, and doing absolutely nothing. But the universe, and more specifically the local kindergarten PDA, operates on a strict schedule of suffering. My phone buzzed at 9 a.m. It was a text from Susan. Yes, the same Susan I mentally destroyed in the cereal aisle. The text read, Ethan, Brayden would love to have little Nix over for a playdate today at 1 p.m. We live in the Whispering Pines gated community. Don't be late. I stared at the screen. This wasn't an invitation. It was a tactical reconnaissance mission. Susan was suspicious. She wanted to observe Nix on her home turf to figure out why her $5,000 violin-playing prodigy was being upstaged by a kid who still wears dinosaur onesies. Nix, I called out. She was currently in the living room, trying to teach her fluffy, magically altered hellhound, Destroyer, how to play fetch with a rolled-up sock. Put your shoes on. We're going behind enemy lines. Susan's house wasn't a house. It was a McMansion. It had giant marble pillars, a perfectly manicured lawn, and a magical warding system that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. When she opened the mahogany front door, she was wearing a passive-aggressive smile and an apron that said number 1 man a mom. Ethan, you made it, she beamed, though her eyes were scanning my 2012 Honda Civic parked in her pristine driveway with absolute disgust. And little Nix, come in, come in. Brayden is currently finishing his deep-core mana meditation in the solarium, but he'll be out soon. We walked inside, and the place looked like a museum where you aren't allowed to touch anything. Nix immediately zeroed in on a sleek, black circular device humming on the hardwood floor. A robotic vacuum. Her purple eyes went wide. Papa, she whispered in awe. This autonomous disc sweeps the earth of its sins. It cleanses the mortal realm. I shall name it Doom Puck. Before I could stop her, Nix sat cross-legged directly on top of the Roomba. The vacuum beeped angrily and started slowly carrying her across the living room at 0.5 miles an hour. Nix crossed her arms, looking like a conquering general surveying her new territory. Susan's eye twitched, but she maintained her fake smile. Let me introduce you to my husband, Richard. He works in Mana Crystal Investments. Richard was standing in the kitchen, aggressively swiping on a holographic tablet. He was wearing a Bluetooth earpiece, a vest, and the distinct aura of a guy who explains crypto to people at parties. I walked over and raised my hand. Hey, Richard. I'm Ethan. Richard didn't even look up. He just completely looked right through me, tapped his earpiece, and kept talking about yield rates and Dungeon Core dividends. He completely ignored my existence. Honestly, guys, it felt exactly like when I tell you to hit that subscribe button. I'm standing here dropping absolute lore, risking my life against PDA moms, and 80% of you are just like Richard, swiping right past, ignoring the subscribe button, leaving me hanging. Don't be a Richard. Hit subscribe. It takes 0 mana. I slowly lowered my hand, grabbed a handful of organic almonds from a crystal bowl, and ate them out of pure spite. Richard is just so busy, Susan sighed, entirely unapologetic. But he did want to show you his new acquisition. He imported it for home security. We only want the best for Braden, you know? Richard finally acknowledged us, leading us out to their massive, fenced-in backyard. Sitting in the middle of the perfectly cut grass was a heavy, reinforced magical cage. And pacing inside the cage was a C-rank Gale tiger. It was massive, heavily muscled, and had literal razor-sharp wind currents swirling around its fur. This wasn't a pet. This was an apex predator that you usually need a 5-man raiding party to take down. Imported it directly from the frontier zones, Richard bragged, slapping the side of the magic cage. The tiger roared, a blast of wind rattling the bars. The neighborhood association tried to fine me, but I pay the board members' salaries. This beauty has a bite force of... I wasn't listening. I was looking at the glowing runes on the cage. Now, chat, I am a software administrator for reality. I know bad coding when I see it. The runes powering this cage were a cheap, knockoff localization script. Richard had bought a discount cage for a premium monster to save a few bucks. The mana battery powering the lock was visibly leaking energy. Richard, I said, pointing at the glowing lock. That containment loop is completely degraded. You shouldn't be standing that close. Richard scoffed. Please, Ethan. I think I know a bit more about mana containment than a... What do you do again? Freelance. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. The discount mana battery sparked, overloaded, and instantly shattered. The heavy iron door of the cage swung wide open. The backyard went dead silent. The Gale tiger stepped out onto the manicured lawn. It shook its massive head, the wind currents around its body whipping into miniature tornadoes. It locked its glowing yellow eyes directly on Richard. Richard's smug cryptobro aura evaporated instantly. He dropped his holographic tablet, his knees literally shaking. Susan let out a piercing shriek and dropped her organic lemonade. Run! Richard screamed, putting his wife between himself and the tiger. Real classy guy. I didn't run. I just stood there, taking a slow breath. If I stepped up and punched a C-rank Gale tiger into the stratosphere, Susan would have me reported to the Hunter Association before dinner. I needed to handle this with absolute classroom of the elite-level subtlety. The tiger crouched, ready to pounce on Richard and turn him into a very expensive chew toy. My eyes flashed with blue glitch energy. I opened the developer console in my mind, targeting the Gale tiger's behavioral AI script. Target: Gale tiger entity _099. Executing command: bypassing aggro matrix. Modifying parameter: hostility-0. Modifying parameter: feline instinct -100%. Applying status effect: extreme vulnerability to chin scratches. The tiger leaped into the air, its jaws opening wide to devour Richard. Just as it reached the apex of its jump, the system override kicked in. The terrifying wind currents swirling around its body vanished with a soft pop. The tiger's glowing yellow eyes dilated until they were giant, adorable, completely harmless saucers. Instead of landing on Richard, the 1,000-pound apex predator missed entirely, landed softly on the grass, and immediately rolled over onto its back, exposing its fluffy white belly to the sun. It let out a sound that was less of a terrifying roar and more of a massive, rumbling purr. Marrow. Richard, who was curled up in a fetal position on his expensive patio, peeked through his fingers. What is it doing? Nyx came riding out onto the patio on top of the Roomba. She saw the massive tiger rolling around in the grass and her eyes lit up. Papa, a domestic beast of the wind. It submits to the Empress. Nyx hopped off the Roomba and marched right up to the terrifying C-rank monster. Susan tried to scream for her to stop, but Nyx completely ignored her. She reached out her tiny hand and aggressively scratched the giant tiger right under the chin. The Gale tiger's back legs started violently thumping against the grass in pure, unadulterated bliss. It leaned its massive head into Nyx's tiny hand, purring so loudly it vibrated the patio furniture. "Good beast," Nyx declared solemnly. "You shall serve as my mount during the apocalypse. But for now, you are a very good kitty." I casually walked over, picked up Richard's drop tablet, and handed it to him. "Wow, Richard, you really have that thing perfectly trained. I was worried for a second there, but you clearly have total alpha control. Great purchase." Richard scrambled to his feet, his face completely pale, desperately trying to salvage his pride. Yes, of course. It's all about establishing dominance through aura projection. It knows I am the master." Right on cue, the giant tiger rolled over, completely ignoring Richard, and licked Nyx directly across the face. Nyx giggled, wiping the monster slobber off her cheek. Susan was leaning against the glass sliding door, hyperventilating. The playdate was officially over. She didn't get any intel on Nyx. She didn't get to show off Braden's aura meditation. All she got was a ruined lawn, a leaking mana battery, and the terrifying realization that my 6-year-old daughter was currently treating a lethal monster like a house cat. "Well, look at the time," I said, checking an invisible watch on my wrist. "Nyx has an appointment to watch Space Ninja Dinosaurs in 20 minutes. We should probably get going. Braden's a great kid, though. Tell him good luck with his sitting." I picked Nyx up, throwing her over my shoulder. She waved solemnly to the tiger. "Farewell, Wind Kitty. Remain vigilant." As we walked back to the beat-up Honda Civic, the automated Roomba slowly bumped against my sneaker and beeped mournfully, as if it was sad to see its Empress leave. I strapped Nyx into her car seat and started the engine. The squeaky serpentine belt whined in protest, but it held together. "Papa?" Nyx asked as we pulled out of the gated community, leaving the McMansions behind. "Why did the shiny man buy a beast he could not conquer?" "Because, kid," I smiled, pulling up to a red light, "some people spend all their mana trying to look like the boss, instead of just reading the source code. So, after surviving the playdate from hell, I thought the hardest part of putting Nyx through the mortal education system was behind me. But then Monday rolled around, and Mrs. Davis handed me a bright yellow kindergarten health and history form. Apparently, the school district requires a complete background check, a medical history, and an exact date of birth for all students. They were doing a unit on birthdays, and Mrs. Davis wanted to know when Nyx's was. I was sitting at my kitchen table at 11 p.m., drinking instant coffee, staring at this piece of paper. Now, I'm not just a guy who hits things really hard. In this world, I am the literal system administrator. I was a white hat hacker before the rifts opened, and manipulating the server code of reality is basically just advanced SEO and database management to me. Bypassing the school district's firewall to upload a forged birth certificate was going to take me exactly 4 seconds. But out of sheer curiosity, I decided to actually check her real stats. I leaned back, my eyes flaring with that familiar blue glitch energy, and pulled up Nyx's raw source code. The glowing holographic terminal popped up over my kitchen table. Entity designation: Nyx, Empress of the Void. Server uptime, age 300 years, 4 months, 12 days. I nearly choked on my instant coffee. 300 years. I wiped off my screen, thinking I had a cache error. But no, the server logs were completely verified. The kid sleeping in the other room, currently drooling on a stuffed octopus, was 3 centuries old. For those of you who watched the Deep Lore videos on the channel, you probably already knew this and were sitting in the comments calling me a bad dad for not checking sooner. But look, it literally makes no sense, right? How is a 300-year-old, the harbinger of the apocalypse, still throwing temper tantrums over juice boxes and struggling to tie her shoes? I dug a little deeper into her system directory. Developmental state: locked. Stasis. Social interaction logs: 0. Environmental stimuli: null. And suddenly, it all made perfect, depressing sense. 300 years ago, the moment she awakened as the Calamity Child at 6 years old, the Holy Church panicked. Instead of, raising her or teaching her not to be evil, they used the highest tier of divine magic to seal her in the Abyssal Void. They bound her in those infinite durability chains I broke in the first dungeon. She spent 3 centuries in absolute sensory deprivation. No light, no sound, no people. Her physical aging was completely halted by the holy magic, and her emotional and mental development was frozen because she literally had 0 interactions with the universe. You don't grow up if you don't experience anything. She was functionally, biologically, and mentally a 6-year-old who had just been kept in the universe's most secure Tupperware container for 300 years. I felt a sudden, heavy pang of guilt in my chest. The kid hadn't had a single birthday party in 3 centuries. "All right?" I muttered, typing furiously on my mental keyboard. "Let's fix that." I forged her birth certificate, setting her birthday to this upcoming Saturday. If the church stole 300 birthdays from her, I was going to make sure this one was absolute perfection. Crash. My kitchen window completely shattered. Glass rained all over my cheap linoleum floor. A figure clad in heavy, tattered black robes tumbled through the broken window, rolling across the floor before landing in a dramatic, crouching pose. He smelled like sulfur, wet dog, and bad life choices. He was holding a jagged, glowing red dagger. It was an Abyssal Cultist, one of those fanatic weirdos who worship the dark arts and hang out in dungeon basements. "At last," the cultist rasped, his voice dripping with dramatic fanaticism. "The stars have aligned. The veil is pierced. We have searched the shadows for 3 centuries. And finally, the Ancient One is found. Where is she, mortal? Where is the 300-year-old Empress of Despair?" I just sat there, holding my coffee mug, staring at the broken glass on my floor. I literally just got the deposit down for this apartment. "Hey," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Do you know how much a dual-pane window costs in this economy?" The cultist completely ignored me. He stood up, throwing his arms wide, monologuing to the ceiling. "We, the Brotherhood of the Black Dawn, shall liberate her from this mortal prison. She shall lead us to bathe the world in blood. Bring her to me, so I may pledge my eternal service." Chat, I want you to look at this guy. Just look at him, standing in my kitchen, screaming into the void, completely ignoring everything I'm saying. This is exactly what you guys look like when you ignore the subscribe button on this video. You're just standing there, in the dark, missing the point. Don't be like this guy. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and help me pay for this broken window. Before the cultist could continue his rant about bathing the world in blood, the hallway door slowly creaked open. Nyx stood there. She was rubbing her eyes, dragging her dinosaur blanket behind her. Her hair was a messy silver bird's nest. "Papa," she whined, her squeaky voice heavy with sleep. "The loud mortal is interrupting my slumber, and Destroyer needs to go outside to make a tinkle." The fluffy, magically altered white hellhound trotted out from behind her legs, letting out a soft woof. The cultist froze. He looked at the 6-year-old in the dinosaur onesie. He looked at the fluffy white bunny dog. He looked at the jagged, evil dagger in his hand. You could visibly see the 300 years of cult mythology actively crashing in his brain like a bad Windows update. "This," the cultist stammered, pointing a trembling finger at Nyx. "This cannot be." The ancient text spoke of a towering figure of shadows, a beast of endless slaughter, not a toddler. Nyx's eyes slowly faded from tired to a glowing, dangerous purple. She didn't like the word toddler. "Mortal," she whispered, the temperature in the kitchen dropping to freezing. "You have broken the transparent wall of my fortress. You have awakened the Empress before the sun has risen." The cultist tried to salvage the situation. He dropped to one knee and pulled out what I can only assume was his idea of a dark tribute. A raw, bloody piece of steak from a plastic grocery bag. "Oh, Ancient One," he pleaded, "accept this blood sacrifice. Reclaim your dark throne." Nyx stared at the raw meat. She looked at me in absolute disgust. "Papa, the fanatic offers uncooked beef. It is not breaded. It is not shaped like a dinosaur. It is not a chicken nugget." "I know, kid," I sighed, standing up from the kitchen table. "It's incredibly disrespectful. Execute him, she demanded, turning around and marching back to her bedroom, and have the fluffy beast escorted to the grass. The cultist watched her leave, entirely dumbfounded. He slowly stood up, looking at me. Does she truly desire processed poultry over the flesh of the innocent? Buddy, I said, stretching my neck until it popped. You have no idea. I didn't use a flashy spell. I didn't summon an aura. I just walked over, grabbed him by the scruff of his ridiculous black robes, opened the front door, and literally threw him out into the apartment hallway. Go home, I told him, tossing his raw steak out after him. And if the Brotherhood of the Black Dawn comes back, you better bring a 10-piece meal with sweet and sour sauce, or I'm deleting your entire faction from the server. I slammed the door, locked the deadbolt, and sighed. I had a window to fix, a dog to walk, and apparently a 300th birthday party to plan for a 6-year-old. Just a typical Tuesday. Saturday morning arrived, and my cheap 2-bedroom apartment was officially a high-risk hazard zone. Not because of a dungeon break, but because the two most powerful entities in the universe were currently arguing over party decorations. Today was Nyx's 300th birthday. Biologically and mentally, she was turning 6, but chronologically, she was hitting the big 300. So I decided to throw her a party. I was standing in the kitchen, aggressively trying to frost a store-bought sheet cake, when the arguing in the living room reached a boiling point. The balloons must be uniform, Uriel's voice echoed, completely devoid of his usual majestic calm. The Archangel was currently standing on my cheap IKEA coffee table, using literal divine holy breath to inflate pink balloons. Because he was using holy breath, the balloons didn't need helium. They just floated, glowing with a faint, blinding heavenly aura. They represent the spheres of the heavens. You are placing them haphazardly. Demon King, Asmodeus, wearing a Kiss the Cook apron over his obsidian armor, was hanging streamers. Except his streamers were woven from the shadows of the damned. Silence, pigeon! The Demon King roared back, taping a strip of dark matter to the ceiling fan. A celebration of the Empress requires chaos. It requires an aesthetic of despair. Your glowing orbs are blinding me. I walked out of the kitchen holding a plastic butter knife covered in green frosting. Hey, I said, pointing the knife at both of them. Both of you chill. Uriel, stop infusing the balloons with divine light. You're going to give the kindergartners a sunburn. And Asmodeus, take down the dark matter. I bought crepe paper from the dollar store. Use that. And where is the piñata? Asmodeus proudly held up a massive, intricately crafted papier-mâché figure. It was a perfectly detailed, biblically accurate angel covered in eyes and flaming wheels. Uriel looked at it, his jaw dropping. Is that supposed to be me? You intend for children to beat an effigy of the heavenly host with a stick. It is a symbol of our eternal war, Asmodeus grunted, looking incredibly pleased with himself. I'm going to lose my mind. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Put the angel in the closet, Asmodeus. We are using the cardboard dinosaur I bought at the party supply store. Do not overcomplicate this. Just then, the doorbell rang. The guests were arriving. I opened the door, and standing in the hallway was Tommy, the kid Nyx had pinned to a playground slide with a gravity well a few weeks ago, along with his very nervous-looking dad. Right behind them was Susan, the ultimate final boss of the PDA, holding the hand of her mana-meditating son, Brayden. Susan looked past me, her eyes scanning my cramped living room. Her nose literally wrinkled. She was judging my cheap couch, my tiny TV, and the fact that we didn't have a crystal chandelier. Honestly, guys, the look of absolute, unearned judgment on Susan's face was painfully familiar. It's the exact same look I get from people who watch 40 minutes of this story, completely consume the lore, laugh at the jokes, and then scroll away without hitting the subscribe button. Seriously, you are actively living in my apartment right now. Do not be a Susan. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and validate my existence. Ethan, Susan forced a tight smile. What a cozy space you have. So compact. Does it even have proper mana ventilation? We just open a window, Susan. I said deadpan, stepping aside to let them in. Welcome to the party. Nyx came running out of her bedroom. She was wearing a little black party dress with a sparkly tulle skirt, and she had a generic, cheap plastic birthday tiara sitting lopsided on her silver hair. Destroyer, the fluffy white hellhound, trotted faithfully behind her, wearing a little red bow tie. Mortals, Nyx announced, throwing her arms wide. Welcome to the grand festival of my birth. You may present your tributes at the altar of the television stand. The kids didn't care about the weird dialogue. They just saw balloons and completely lost their minds. Within 5 minutes, the apartment was a chaotic war zone of screaming 6-year-olds. I set up a game of musical chairs. Now, normally, musical chairs is a harmless game. But when you mix a 300-year-old Demon Empress with highly competitive suburban children, it becomes a psychological thriller. The music stopped. There was one chair left. Nyx and Brayden were standing right next to it. Brayden, being the prodigy he is, tried to use a low-level kinetic dash to steal the seat. But Nyx didn't use magic. She didn't use a gravity well. She just turned her head, locked eyes with Brayden, and unleashed a glare so fundamentally terrifying, so deeply rooted in the abyssal void, that Brayden instantly stopped, froze in place, and politely stepped backward, offering her the chair. A wise surrender, peasant. Nyx nodded approvingly, taking her seat. She won flawlessly. Classroom of the elite level manipulation without even spending a drop of mana. By 2 p.m. it was time for the entertainment. I couldn't afford to hire a high-ranking bard, so I hired a guy off a local community board. His stage name was the Great Gazoo. He was a washed-up D-rank illusionist mage who looked like he bought a wizard hat at a Halloween clearance sale and decided to make it his entire personality. Gazoo stood in the center of the living room, waving a cheap plastic wand. "And now, boys and girls," he said in a highly exaggerated voice, "I shall summon a creature from the great beyond." He muttered a low-tier mana incantation, tapped his top hat, and pulled out a very bored-looking, slightly chubby white dove. The kids clapped politely. Brayden looked unimpressed. Nyx, however, leaned forward, her purple eyes narrowing as she analyzed the Great Gazoo. She crossed her arms, looking like a disappointed college professor grading a freshman's paper. "Mortal," Nyx critiqued, her squeaky voice cutting through the living room. "Your mana pathways are severely clogged. You are leaking arcane energy from your elbows. Furthermore, a bird of peace? A true summoner pulls beasts of carnage from the void. Your technique is incredibly inefficient." Gazoo blinked, looking down at the 6-year-old in the sparkly tiara. Well, okay besties. That is literally how we're ending this video. Thank you guys so much for holding out for me. I know I completely ditched you guys on the most toxic cliffhanger, my bad. But trust me, what's coming next is top tier. So do your host a solid and share this video, the last one, and the lore video. Let's completely spam the comments with nuggets. Poultry leg actually. Wait, if you're vegan, drop a pizza. Pizza honestly. I panicked and couldn't think of anything else. Don't judge me. Also, huge apology for the delay. The tech guys in my town are
being the greatest technician that's ever lived.
So my laptop was held hostage at a local repair shop. My cat literally knocked a whole cup of tea on it. Okay, hold up, I'm literally exposing myself. I don't even have a cat. Loudly crying face, I'm just making up excuses for being incredibly lazy. Anyway, please hit that subscribe button so YouTube can feed this kid. Love you, bye.